My name never touched a single presentation slide in 6 long years, despite building the entire technical foundation that kept our company alive. Every single quarterly meeting just grouped my work under the generic engineering team label, with no personal credit or acknowledgement. I realized very early on that I was completely invisible inside my own creation, working silently while others took the spotlight. Everything shifted the day our new executive, Julian, walked into the office wearing designer shoes and spouting empty corporate buzzwords about disruptive energy. He looked at me like I was a piece of outdated equipment, someone who had overstayed their usefulness and needed to be quietly replaced. Shortly after, an internal email went out about strategic talent realignment, which was just corporate code for pushing senior staff out the door. Julian spent his first month hosting flashy meetings and promising to flatten our management structure to speed up decision-making. His idea of innovation was promoting his golfing buddy, Brandon, to act as my co-lead in research and development. Brandon once asked me if cloud servers were affected by actual rainy weather, which made working alongside him an absolute nightmare. Suddenly, my name started disappearing from important email threads, and critical product strategy meetings were rescheduled without telling me. It was the classic corporate freeze-out, where a company slowly dims your presence until you become an afterthought they can easily replace. But I did not panic or throw a fit, choosing instead to stay late every night while quietly building an ironclad paper trail. There is immense power in being completely overlooked by arrogant people, because they talk freely around you without realizing you are listening. I overheard Julian telling our legal counsel over drinks that he planned to make a dramatic leadership change before the next major investor presentation. He explicitly said he wanted to retire the old guard with flair, clearly targeting my position. Instead of getting angry, I started dropping by the legal department under the guise of updating my personal records and estate planning. I brought them fresh coffee, smiled politely, and casually asked to review my original employment contracts and intellectual property agreements. I was looking for a specific, forgotten clause I had personally insisted on years ago during our company acquisition chaos. Section 4B was tucked deep inside the 2019 contract appendix, completely ignored by current management during their recent expansion. It clearly stated that if I was terminated without cause, all intellectual property I authored would immediately revert back to my personal ownership. While Julian and Brandon were busy planning my public replacement, I was silently preparing a legal explosive beneath their feet. The public announcement came on a Thursday, right after a mandatory company breakfast filled with stale pastries and meaningless speeches. Julian stood in front of the entire office and announced that they were injecting fresh, visionary energy into our engineering leadership team. He then introduced Derek, a former intern I had trained years ago, as the new face of our core product division. Derek stood there grinning like he had just won the lottery, thanking Julian for the incredible opportunity to lead us forward. He walked over to my desk afterward and patronizingly told me that he could not wait to learn from my past experience. I wanted to remind him that I built the entire system he was about to manage, but I simply smiled and nodded back. By that afternoon, my admin access to the main investor analytics dashboard had been completely revoked without any formal notice. When I asked Brandon about the missing calendar invites for our weekly strategy calls, he smugly claimed Julian wanted him to handle those now. I swallowed my pride, kept my head down, and continued gathering every single contract document from our legal archive. Julian grew louder and more arrogant with each passing week, doing high-profile interviews and taking credit for technical diagrams I had drawn. I watched Derek fumble through basic technical terminology during monthly updates, but management did not care as long as he looked good on camera. I refused to let emotion cloud my judgment, knowing that corporate battles are won with signed paperwork rather than hurt feelings. I went home, poured a glass of water, and carefully reviewed the digital copy of my signed 2019 contract amendment. The wording was absolute, explicitly covering source code, design schematics, system architecture, and all related technical documentation I had created. I had personally written the vast majority of our core infrastructure, and management was blindly marching toward a massive legal trap. A few days later, I watched our live product demonstration stream from my kitchen table as Derek stumbled through my presentation slides. The company name was displayed in giant glowing letters, showcasing my data pipeline designs while completely scrubbing my name from every slide. Julian sat in the front row beaming with pride, entirely unaware that his rising star was presenting stolen intellectual property. Later that afternoon, a trusted veteran contractor named Leo sent me a private message confirming management planned to fire me at the shareholder summit. He told me Julian wanted to use my exit as a dramatic symbol of company transformation for the board of directors. That message provided total clarity, prompting me to immediately schedule a formal contract review meeting with our head of legal. When I met with our main legal director, Ray, I kept my tone completely casual and framed the meeting around routine estate planning. I asked him to verify if Section 4B of my 2019 agreement was still fully active within the company records. Ray pulled up the archived file, scanned the text, and confirmed that the IP reversion clause remained completely valid and legally binding. I thanked him politely and walked out of his office with my heart racing, knowing the trap was officially set. Julian wanted a public spectacle to showcase his new leadership team, but he had no idea what was actually written in my contract. Over the next 48 hours, I meticulously catalogued every code repository, patent filing, and design document bearing my original digital signature. My name was embedded into thousands of system commit logs and foundational code structures that kept the entire business operational. I backed up every piece of documentation, saved email threads proving my sole authorship, and stored everything on an encrypted external drive. I even embedded subtle digital signatures into our visual framework files just in case management tried to claim joint development later. The official invite for the annual shareholder summit arrived in my inbox with flashing graphics, boasting about a bold new vision forward. I was not listed on the speaker agenda or mentioned anywhere in the promotional materials for the upcoming event. That night, I sent a formal email to my personal address, CCing legal, explicitly referencing Section 4B and my contractual IP rights. The morning of the summit, the Grand Hotel ballroom was packed with investors, board members, and executives sipping drinks under bright spotlights. Julian took the stage with full theatrical energy, presenting my work, my architecture, and my data models as the company's own revolutionary breakthroughs. He then paused dramatically, looking directly at me to deliver his carefully rehearsed speech about turning the page to new leadership. He announced my immediate departure to the crowd, framing it as a respectful retirement to make room for Derek and the new team. A wave of forced applause rippled through the room while a camera zoomed in on my face, waiting for a bitter reaction. I waited until the clapping died down, stood up calmly, and requested the microphone directly from Julian Hand. I looked at the audience and calmly asked our legal counsel to read Section 4B of my employment contract into the official record. Julian tried to laugh it off as an improper interruption, but I cut him off firmly, stating that the clause was absolute. Ray opened his laptop with a frowning expression, located the archived file, and began reading the severe IP reversion terms aloud to the room. The entire ballroom went dead silent as Ray confirmed that all core code, patents, and technical architecture immediately reverted to my personal ownership upon termination without cause. Panic instantly erupted across the stage as our chief technology officer realized they had just lost access to their entire primary platform. The main presentation screens blinked red before going completely dark, signaling that my user credentials and system tokens had automatically revoked. Julian stood frozen in total shock while major investors began shouting questions about legal liability and lost technical assets. I did not yell, boast, or celebrate, choosing instead to hand the microphone back and walk smoothly toward the exit doors. I stepped outside into the bright afternoon sun, leaving behind a collapsing executive team that had built its entire valuation on stolen work. A few blocks away, I walked into the quiet offices of a competing technology firm that had been trying to hire me for months. Their vice president of product welcomed me into a private conference room with a warm smile, ready to build something entirely new together. I realized then that I was never just an expendable employee. I was the actual foundation, and I took it with me.